choose to type into the chat, any option is available. But let's go with Linda's question. And she asked, do you plan to reach out to other faith communities that have traditionally advocated / supported the LGBTQIA plus community? And absolutely. I mean, it's, once again, it goes back to the conversation on community. And in any way we can connect with people, especially we all know that there can be complications with some people as far as their relationships to faith communities. And we all have our separate stories about that. But I do believe just as much that there's a space where both of those things, our community and the faith community, can exist together. So as far as I'm concerned, yes. And Linda, it makes me want to ask you, do you have a particular place in mind that you believe TreeHouse should be reaching out to? Ignore the fact that I ended that sentence with a preposition.
Well, I'm a member of Mount Auburn Presbyterian, and but I think there are very identifiable churches and faith communities in the greater Cincinnati area who have really stepped up in advocacy. And some of them are marching in the Pride Parade every year. Others have just been very outspoken through their communication when there has been a strong concern about a major issue here in Cincinnati. So I think that there are several faith communities who have already identified themselves as strongly supporting and advocating the kind of work that you all want to try to do through TreeHouse.
That's awesome. No, that's really great. And if you have, I mean, feel free to share any information in that regard. Oh, are you guys catching me? I'm having a little bit of an internet problem.
No worries. You just broke up a little bit, but I think you're good now.
Okay, great. So I see there's another question from Andrew. Clarity, I'm wondering if you'd like to talk on that a little bit.
Hi, yes, I would. Let me reread. My chat is popping off. Do you have budget information you could disclose and define? Yeah, that initial 5K. Yeah, like I said in the chat, we can define that. We can give you an invoice if you did. We have some kind of specific things that we are trying to fund, and also just to try to have a little bit of a nest egg to continue. So yeah, I can definitely get you an invoice, talk about that. I have a few direct messages. I don't want to like share those questions if they only intended them to be direct. So
yeah, we can discuss those messages offline if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. There was another. Oh, hey, Nancy. Hi. I'm sorry to skip around, but I saw a board of directors question. I think my chat might be a little chaotic. Nancy asked, why the board of directors structure? Why have not a general membership or other organizations as members to form a network? That is a completely fair question. We thought that it might be really difficult actually to do it that way because there are so many people that want to be involved, rather than just having like individuals as like board members to keep a stronger, tighter team. We also recognize that like the foundation of such a center does take like certain acumen. So we want people to be like best involved where their skills match up, I think, like, because we still have volunteers, which I think is what a general membership would essentially do, that if individuals were general members of TreeHouse, then they would serve in volunteer capacities and do things like that while there would still be like a leadership sort of team. We also wanted to do it too that when the actual centers were established, there was no such thing as like a member of the center and a non-member of the center, that it's just like nobody gets any special privileges. You can't pay for more access to certain things or discounted things. Like it just doesn't work like that. Like I think that was also our intention, in just to make it a tight group of people that respond to like the needs and the changing connections in the community, and then just allowing people to be involved in whatever capacity they want. Does that answer your question, or is that too vague? Also, I did not mean to skip Abigail's question too, so sorry to make it hard on you, Darnell. I might have to go back, sorry. Darnell, did you want to keep it going? Do you want me to keep it going?
I think Darnell may have had some issue.
Oh no, poor Darnell.
Not a worry,
He's
not a
such
worry.
a great moderator too.
Yeah.
Abigail K asked right before Nancy did, sorry. What are some of TreeHouse's short-term or more immediate goals and projects? I know from my personal and my committee, the finance and organization committee, we're just making sure that our 501c3 paperwork is airtight, that our bylaws are accurate and correct, that they reflect how we really intend to operate. We've got like events coming up. We've got all different kind of things. The public facing side is definitely more of Dan and Joshua's element, so I'll let them speak on that.
Clarity, can I add one point here?
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment that one thing I think the folks listening should understand is that we are very committed to this mission and the bylaws that we've constructed here. We are focused entirely on the ideas of the collective missions together, the centers, the support systems, the community for which we intend to protect, to be a part of, to bring together. That commitment to you is so strong that we've actually had a few tests of where contributions might, we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, okay? We're not going to compromise anything about those missions, regardless of how enticing the contributions might be. I hope that made sense, Dan.
Absolutely. I think Darnell got back in the room.
He did. Thank you, Cincinnati Bell. I apologize if I've missed any questions that might have been put into the chat box. Are there any others?
Yeah, we had a few. I'm just trying to parse through them a little bit. My chat is a little messed up because, I mean, I do know that Zoom shows you all the messages sequentially, even if they're direct messages, which is so really confusing.
Well, I can talk to a little bit about, we talked, asked about, what are some short-term and long-term. I know from a community engagement kind of perspective, Darnell and I have plans for, like I alluded to before, creating opportunities for things like town halls and partnerships with the arts community and events like that as well. I'm really passionate about creating opportunities for discussion and really diving into those kind of heavy hitting topics, and then how we can kind of do more in terms of supporting some needs of our community through those discussions kind of. And so whether they be town halls, whether they be, our, like I said, arts-based programming that we would like to do, drag shows, coffee shop kind of environments and things like that. Those are all kinds of stuff that we're already starting to formulate and think about as well when it comes to kind of the short term planning that we're kind of doing.
If I may add on to that, so I've been in Cincinnati since 2009, and something that I recognized pretty early on is that there's a lot of neighborhood pride. There's not a sort of united Cincinnati front, and I think that same sort of thing also permeates through our various communities. And thinking about how we have three different prides. We have multiple queer spaces, and they're all very separate. And I know a big part of the ultimate goal is to be a resource that connects all of those dots, have a singular calendar that sort of points people in multiple directions of events that might be of interest to them, or organizations that might speak to what they need. So overall, I think a big part of the long term is to continue bridging those gaps. Now, as far as short term, absolutely everything that Joshua said. Also trying to find out how many ways can we connect with spaces that we don't normally connect as a queer community. What are those places that want us there? But we, like, for example, we've been building a relationship with Memorial Hall right now, and the potential of seeing events in the future being a part of that space, which is not a thing that normally happens. So just trying to get our community in as many different spaces as possible, but specifically in a united way.
There's also an incredible space share that's going to be renting some office space here in Mount Auburn. They rented the space for several years and did what they describe as peace brunches. It's the organization SOS Art. We have some of their materials now in TreeHouse. They basically collaborate with artists and work at creating artist community spaces. And Saad Goshen is the head of that organization, and we are basically going to be partnering with them to work towards creating a quarterly peace brunch that will happen in the Mount Auburn Social Hall. And it will be a fantastic opportunity for all of our root organizations, GLSEN, PFLAG, Love Must Win, and BPI, to kind of be able to table at that. But it's also going to be really wonderful for the other space sharers that are here at Mount Auburn, the League of Women Voters, Soteni International, Women's City Club, Sierra Club, and just friends of the community, just to be able to kind of like come together and share, share a meal. We also were able to try out once in the midst of, before the mask mandate, which is kind of starting back a little bit. We had a monthly space called Lgbtqia Tree, basically designed to be not a themed event, not a drag show, just designed to be low-key community space for people to share, light bites, have just conversations, get to know people. And it was a fantastic first event. We did it on July 24th. The goal is that we do it basically every fourth Saturday. We'll be creating that space. We're gonna have to see at the end of August where everything is with the Delta variant. We might offer this space online still. But that was very successful. And the goal eventually as well is to, story time is gonna be happening once a month. There's a lot happening right now, so I can't promise that it'll be this month, but I swear by September, we're gonna get back to it. And that I'm excited to not only create space for, younger LGBTQ members of the community, but also LGBTQ families. So.
Yes. All right, and I see there's another question, a great question from Andrew. In the vision on your website, you mentioned we have a space after COVID. Could you elaborate on what you mean by this? Is there already a space secured, or is this just an idea? I find it confusing. Your website's vision mentions a singular space, but the presentation described a vision of 4 spaces. So currently right now, over at Mount Auburn Presbyterian Church, on the back of the building, we have a space there. And that's the space where we've literally from the ground up grown treehouse. And that is our starting point. What you're talking about as far as looking at, and we do have that actual space. And the goal is that once we can get to a point where, hey, thank you for visuals. Yes, that's a little map for you that points where exactly we are. And so there is an actual space to answer that question. The goal, though, is to expand beyond that one space. And a long-term goal is to have those 4 different spaces in 4 different neighborhoods. Does that help answer that for you, Andrew?
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just a little bit unclear on that. I would just suggest that the vision, you maybe reconsider expanding your vision, because I think it's selling yourself a little short based on what the presentation showed. That vision seems a little small.
Thank you. Thank
This
you.
is the first time we've like unveiled these plans too.
Yeah.
It's always like a tricky ball game, right? When you propose something to like the public, because they want to say like, well, what do you already have established and what's just an idea? So we wanted to come like prepared with like ideas and plans, but also recognizing that they're malleable, they can change, like things that we understand, things do not always go as planned. 2020. So definitely willing to, we're open to different ideas too.
Yeah, and exactly what's happening right now, Andrew, what you just did, that's a part of what we're trying to do. We need that feedback to continue to specify, clarify, and build on what we've already started. I want to go to the next question. How can, oh, love all of this so much. Yes. How can we community members support you in your mission? I think a lot of that is toward the end of the presentation, what Clarity was talking about as far as those different skills. If you or someone you know has a skill that you think could benefit us in some way, whether that's joining the board or if that's being more on an advisory side, or if you know someone who would absolutely be a great person to join our board or get connected to us in some way, that's the best way to do it. Also, word of mouth. Please talk about us, share our information, like us on social media, and share that with your friends and family and get them to support us as well. So, because right now we're in this place where, because we started building this during a pandemic, we've not really gotten to get out in the community and connect with people in a more visceral way. So right now, word of mouth is paramount. So anyway, and so it'd be great if you can, in any way, if you know somebody who has a skill we can use, if you have that skill, or if it's just a matter of you sharing about us on social media, what you experienced in this presentation, any way you can get the word out about us, that's going to be like huge. Anybody else would like to add anything onto that? Ways that community members can help? All right.
Just feel like that support, through social media, through your channels, if you can donate, that would be amazing. Again, yeah, if you have questions, challenge us, ask us, like come to see us, come tour the space, however you want this transparency or however you want to engage with us, we're so open and available to it. I do love that about TreeHouse, because we do have a lot of board members, and so we have like a lot of different ways to engage.
I also know one of our root organizations, Black Power Initiative, they do an incredible food service weekly in Walnut Hills. They've partnered with La Soupe, and they are over basically by the old Kroger space on Thursdays and Fridays. I think Friday is the main day. But they always can use help. They can always use help with volunteers. Occasionally they do bring like clothing drive, clothing items over, period products, different things like that. Rico Blackman with BPI would be the person to reach out with that. People are always welcome to come to a PFLAG meeting. I almost consider coming to a PFLAG meeting volunteer work. It is such an incredible and valuable environment of support and just community connection. So many people that come into that space are looking for, community. And if they're navigating a coming out journey, it's so valuable for them to be able to meet someone who is LGBTQ, whether they are an LGBTQ elder or whether they are someone, you know, who's just recently figured out a bunch of stuff, you know. Any and all of that is so valuable. And the structure of each meeting is basically the same. We kind of center a speaker and education right at the beginning of the meeting. And then the end of the meeting is always centered around support. And like our last meeting, if we have enough people there, we might even split into 2 groups, just to make sure that everybody's needs are kind of centered. But there's not a professional therapist there. It is community supporting community. So those are 2 things I'd offer.
Yeah, no, that's a really great segue into the next question. Have you had any discussions or open to having a connection in any way with the LGBTQAI plus alcohol and drug recovery community in the area? And my answer is yes. I mean, I hate to speak for the group, but it makes me think about how over the course of when the pandemic first hit, and then pretty quickly there was the murder of Breonna Taylor. And so thinking about that, a lot of the conversation that came up in particularly my Black community groups, particularly the queer ones, we talked a lot about how when we say Black Lives Matter, or when it is said, are they including all Black lives, right? Across the board, thinking about the number of Black trans women who are murdered. I think that's no different, for example, than looking within the LGBTQAI plus community. Everybody has a seat at the table. So yes, Rob, if there's any way, we would love to connect with you more and learn more about that, to make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible and making sure that we're making space for people in the alcohol and drug recovery community. Anybody would like to add in onto that? Great. All right. So yes, Rob, please feel free to email us, reach out to us on social. We'd love to make that connection with you. Now, next question. Do you have relationships with local universities? I can speak for myself. I teach over at Northern Kentucky University in the School of the Arts program. I also teach over at UC in the CCM prep program. So yes, and already right now there are a lot of conversations going back, thinking about as far as support groups. Last semester, I had a student who was receiving threats by his next door neighbor. He's a young trans man and was receiving all these threats by the neighbor, and I got him connected with Quebec, actually, who was a phenomenal resource in that regard. But yes, anybody else any specific thing you want to add on to that as far as relationships with local universities? Because I know
jump in and say that I am an alum of University of Cincinnati and had some connections with their LGBTQ center. I reached out to a few different ones to come to this too. So I would love to work with universities because they have thriving LGBTQ centers, and they become little islands that are just, you know, oasis for college students, but it's weird not to have that in the greater city at large. So I think they're a super valuable resource. And if you also too have anybody that you have in mind, we would love to reach out and connect.
We have a fantastic relationship with Andrew Neese through the UC College of Business. Andrew is a past PFLAG Scholarship Award winner and is just an absolute force of nature. He's a younger student at UC, and while the LGBTQ Center didn't have a head of their department for a few years, Andrew completely built like an LGBTQ program within the College of Business that is fantastic. Again, it's called Pride at Lindner, or PAL. Their social media presence, especially, all of their marketing is just fantastic. It's very educationally rooted. But the wonderful thing as far as like the university bridge that we have, as Darnell was saying, if we don't have that through, you know, specific like business connections necessarily, a lot of us are creatives and know a lot of the people in the different theater departments within these schools, Xavier, NKU, UC. I myself am a CCM graduate, and we work with a lot of local theaters as well. So that's kind of, I'm very excited to really get the arts included in all of this, because obviously there's a very huge population of LGBTQ artists in the city as well.
Yes, and as far as the arts are concerned right now, I mean, I'm kind of working on a Cincinnati Shakespeare Company. I've been working there since 2010, and we used to have an LGBTQ night, and that went away when the person who started it in the company left. And it's something that I'm in the process of bringing back, and I'm trying to also make that a thing across Cincinnati in general, having LGBTQ nights at all of the theaters. And I know one of the challenges that we will face with that is theaters are struggling right now, as they've lost a lot of money over the course of this pandemic. And but yes, just I guess what I can say is that I am still working to make sure that we can have space for that. Here's from Michael. As a question, I noticed that within this board and community center, there are leaders that are serving on other boards and within other organizations. Are other orgs like HRC and Equitas and local orgs involved as far as current leadership? Thank you. So I can tell you that I'm on the board of Caracol, and I brought up TreeHouse multiple times already. I'm in a process of, I'm hoping that in the future we could potentially have, I don't know if it's something, even if it's testing, something that's we're gonna do something. There's gonna be a collaboration between Caracol and TreeHouse for sure. And I know that Joshua is involved with HRC. Joshua, is there anything you'd like to add on to that?
No, I was just going to chime in and say that I'm involved. I'm a steering committee co-chair for our local chapter of HRC, as well as a community engagement co-chair. HRC is kind of what launched me into this work with community engagement for Cincinnati. And it's really what kind of sparked my passion for creating community and opportunities for communities. So.
Yes. So we are, we have our hands in as many things as humanly possible. Okay, and let's move on to Sarah's question. You may have covered this in the previous slides that I missed. How many additional board members are you looking to add? It was also mentioned that you will be adding advisors in addition to board members. How will that participation be organized? As in, will they assist particular board committees or be more of a volunteer force for specific duties, programs as needed? I think these are all great questions. As far as how many are we looking to add, I think if I remember correctly, our max is 30 at its most. So right now, I don't remember right offhand, how many people do we have right now?
13.
13. Great. So yes, the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. So if you have an interest, please send us, reach out to us, please. And as far as the advisors and how that will work, that's stuff that we're still working out. But if anybody would like to add anything more specific to that, please feel free.
Yeah, so that is a role that we envision for people who want to advise in short-term capacities instead of having the whole commitment of a board member. We would sort of term this like a special of the board is like an advisory council, an advisory board committee. And that could be for specific duties and programs, but we envision them in like a short-term ask for, insights or guidance on different projects, or, ways that those people might want to be involved too. So that I envision more as something like people who've been long-term leaders in the community, people who have, worked on different projects over a period of time, something like that.
Yes, and. All right. Okay, I believe we are caught up on questions, but does anyone have any additional question they'd like to ask? Or even if it's a comment or a suggestion, we are open.
I have would love to just go back to the local universities question to speak a little bit about GLSEN, if that's okay.
Please do.
I just wanted to add, so we have a long-lasting relationship with most of the universities in the area. We typically take multiple interns most academic years, typically with like social work, education, that type of internship. But we also do like personal development trainings, like inclusivity, LGBTQ trainings within the universities, most often with like teaching professions or like the teaching colleges, social work, those types of things, but business, we've done a bunch of those. And we also have some of our facilitators for our youth group, also our college students, and we also have quite a few like youth group graduates that are super involved and want to take on more of a leadership role as they've just graduated from youth group and they are now in college. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them, but absolutely.
I have a like logistical question. I hopped on very late. Like I've basically only been present for the Q&A session. Is there some, I see that it's recording though. Is there some way that I might be able to watch this later?
Absolutely. Yeah, we recorded the presentation and we also just wanted to kind of record the questions so we have a record of it. And there's several people that wanted to be here that aren't able. So this will absolutely be available on our YouTube channel, which is TreeHouse Cincinnati on YouTube.
Great, thank you.
All right, and I see Dwayne left a comment, and most likely, just so you know, 30, I don't know if we're ever going to reach 30. That's just more purely there for a max, just to have a max.
Yeah, as a nonprofit administration expert, you do not want a 30-member board. As a new organization, it is beneficial to have a larger board, but that means 20 people or so maybe, and a vibrant, strong committee structure of multiple committees working underneath them that include non-board members doing work on behalf of the organization. Because once you get that larger board whose job is to exercise policy responsibility and fiduciary responsibility over the organization, more than 20 or 21 people, it really becomes unmanageable and much more harm than good. And actually the ideal board gets smaller the more mature your organization becomes. So you may start off with 20 and then 10 years down the road be down to a 7-member board. But I would not advertise that you want to get 30 board members. And also, as a fundraiser, at a meeting like this, where you're just testing the idea with some stakeholders, it's okay not to have those numbers. But any meeting beyond this level, with the public, with potential funders, you're going to need at least very rough idea numbers for what the cost and fundraising basis is going to be for each of the 4 centers before you move any further. So I would recommend that you really work on getting some preliminary numbers that you can quote for those parts of the project before you approach anyone beyond these types of stakeholder meetings.
I sincerely appreciate all of that, Dwayne. We've definitely found out, I mean, the hope of having like a larger board, you know, as an initial, like, we're so excited, more people, but we're very quickly finding exactly what you're saying. The reason for having a larger board is I very intentionally wanted the board to be L and G and B and T and Q. We don't yet have I, but we do have all the A's on our board. So that is a huge intention of this space. You know, if you even want to think of it like a galactic council or whatever, you know. So we don't want to get too ridiculous, but we really want to make sure that we have a diverse circle of voices. And these are people who are potentially even navigating homelessness and food insecurity, all the way to big corporate people. It's very important for us to just have those dynamics very, very much alive, because there's just so many. I feel like sometimes things just kind of get stuck maybe in like a middle class sense, shall we say, and then there's disconnects that kind of develop. And I feel like, I know when I came back into Cincinnati, it felt like any conversation that was happening, I wasn't allowed to be in that room, or any of the things that were being talked about. It wouldn't do me any good to be there because I was at the very lower end of everything. But our intention is to very much be inclusive and intersectional with everything that we are doing.
Thank you, Dan. All right. And here's another question. Are there bylaws for the organization that are publicly available? I can definitely tell you we have recently done another draft. We keep going back and making it tighter, making it more specific, cleaning it up. Charity, would you like to talk about that at all?
Yeah, just like you said, our document has been evolving since we composed it, several months ago. They are not currently publicly available, but we want them to be. We intend for them to be. I think, like Darnell just mentioned, we're just finalizing them. I saw too that you had another question. I'm just kind of consolidating really quick about a public statement. TreeHouse is not interested in receiving public or government funding. I am not sure what you read. We just mentioned in our presentation that we were going to try to advocate for government funding, both city and state. I am not sure what you read. We could talk about it, question mark.
Yeah, would you like? Yes, would you like to elaborate at all on that? Like where you might have seen that?
I'm not sure if I'm showing up because I'm doing this through Facebook and not through regular Zoom, so I don't see my image. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. It was a statement made by one of your leaders, and I don't want to call anybody out, but it was a statement. I think it was definitely on Facebook and social media, and I believe it was under a TreeHouse bannerhead, but it was one of your leaders making this statement, and it concerned me a great deal because I think government funding, we are our government, and they're a good source of support.
There definitely was. I can speak to initial push where basically when we started becoming a nonprofit, the initial idea of this space was just meant to be a space. I wasn't intending this to be a nonprofit. It is kind of just snowballed in a lot of ways. Our initial first potential funding was actually going to be from City Council. The partnership did not end up panning out. We were going to be coming before the committee and doing a presentation. It wasn't going to be a six-figure budget, but it was going to be substantial, especially for, as far as seed money was concerned. Because of some other comments that were made online by the city council member that brought us into those talks, I had to have a meeting with that person and let them know that our board did not feel safe accepting that money any longer, especially when we are creating a community center and someone offering us funding is being looked at and very much perceived in the community as a bully. So we made a series of requests. It was, 3 very simple requests. Public apology be written and signed and posted to social media on the platform that they made these statements. And that the person be willing to come to a public forum. That's kind of our initial public talks that we were having in January, February. that's kind of why we pivoted to those, is because this was supposed to be kind of the ground for that. The individual was excited to come, but didn't realize they had to do all three of those things. So when I went back to double check that, it very quickly talks fell apart. So probably any of those statements were made at a point where we were having to very much pivot. Yeah, we have just found the need to stand up for the community more dynamically. I think that there might have been some instances where people might have just kind of, you know, gone ahead and tried to just work that out. But I definitely felt, and I know that so many people of our board did not feel safe with this person. And as far as I'm concerned, it's not about, you know, anything that I as an individual think. I am being a reflection of these people in a lot of spaces, and I care about every person who's on my board very deeply. So I did not feel comfortable kind of moving forward in that space. And Clarity and I were in the Action Tank program together, and it was a very dynamic lesson, shall we say. Yeah, I don't know if that helps answer the question, but that could have been where it was coming from. And with
I appreciate you addressing that, Dan, because it was your post I was speaking to. And my concern was that you were letting personalities get in the way of the work of the organization and throwing the baby out with the bathwater because you didn't want to work with this person, and making a blanket statement about public funding in general, when really it was just, I don't want to work with this council member.
Yes, and that specifically, I had worked with this council member numerous times before, and with this particular instance, saw a completely other side to this person.
I think it is possible to say to any public official, we are interested in you working with us as a public servant, but we are not interested in being a photo op for you. And I think that's what was taking place in that situation.
Got it.
Yeah, like Dan mentioned, we met at City Council School, so we're pretty familiar with the way that public government works, and we're really interested in the process. And we mentioned it in our presentation about how we plan to leverage carefully and intentionally the government funding that we receive. And
excellent.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
So I understand that those relationships can be contentious, but we just try to be honest and upfront, and we hope that people will be honest and upfront with us in return too.
And I will say too, the conversation was left that the person is supporting what we are doing. I definitely kind of left the ball in this person's court. So, yeah.
So yes, all of that is to say, we are not against government money or funding of any kind. All right. Oh, yes. And not board Charity. Hey, Charity Bonifel, please tell me if I'm mispronouncing it.
No, you did great, actually. Hi, sorry for my tardiness. You might have gone over this. Yes, and the other one is Clarity, not Charity, but anyway, sorry. Is this going to be a space for multiple ages, or is there a focus on youth? We can start there.
Yes, I can definitely tell you that. One of the things that I know for sure, we got to find a way to have more story time with Sparkle. But yes, so this is the whole idea of this, is that it is a space that is not in any way, you know, we have bars that we can go to as adults. So this space is a space where all are welcome across the board, families, kids. We want to have, for example, summer camps, which we started this past summer, and we're wanting to expand on that into the next summer. So definitely we're doing summer camps. We're looking at every possible opportunity we can to connect with every demographic of our community. So for sure, yes. Dan, did you want to add anything to that?
Actually, AJ, would you like to speak to GLSEN?
Ah, yes.
Sure. So I'm AJ from Greater Cincinnati. I am the lead youth group facilitator. So I facilitate as well as do the admin piece of our group. So we do have a group. So for 6th graders to 12th grade or the equivalent. So Monday nights in particular, there will be space designated at TreeHouse to have our face-to-face youth group once it is safe to do so and all that. But yeah, so there will be specific times, and I can totally talk to you more about that if you know any young people that would be interested or you'd be interested in facilitating or helping out in any way. But
Yeah.
there will be designated time where it would be just youth oriented, just for their safety and making sure that, curriculum and all that stuff goes the way that we want it to go. But it is all open to all different ages, and we're hoping to accommodate. I don't want to speak for all of us, but I think we're on the same page here when we want to accommodate all different ages as well as LGBTQ plus families.
Great. Okay, cool. And then I did have just one thing to add or suggest, knowing now that it is all ages. I did have some friends who were not able to attend tonight, who were hoping that there would be some adult spaces or nights for folks that are sober, because they have a hard time engaging with other folks in the queer community because they are sober, and they find that most of their events or abilities to meet with other people or make friends or socialize are tending to be centered around alcohol. So I'm sure you probably maybe discuss some of that, or we can talk more about it later, but I'm glad to know that it is all ages. I'm very glad to know that there is definitely space for youth, but that is something that I just wanted to add that they had mentioned and suggested and had hoped for. And I will definitely catch the recording of the meeting, and I'm so sorry for my tardiness. Thanks.
Oh, no need to be sorry. You're here. That's what matters. Thank you.
Charity, I did want to also let you know that sober spaces, especially, I'm not sober myself, but I do very, very much appreciate the sober community that intersects with the queer community. And I know that Darnell and I have already had conversations about how to make sure that we intentionally have spaces that aren't centered around drinking, because you're absolutely right. There need to be opportunities, even for the people that aren't sober, to be able to have events that aren't centered around alcohol and partying and all that stuff. You know what I mean? I think that that's vitally important. And then also it's vitally important to be able to be inclusive of the community that is sober, because we know that that is a large part of our community. And so I will say that we absolutely are doing what we can to make sure that we are creating intentional spaces for people that are sober, that we're being intentional about making sure that we are creating events that aren't centered around alcohol, because we know how important that is to our community. To the other previous question too, I did want to echo everyone else's sentiments about our interfaith work that we wanted to do. We have such a great interfaith community here in Cincinnati as well, that we definitely want to be intentional about as well, because I think having those interfaith conversations are going to be really, really important. We understand that religious trauma is very, very much a thing that most of our community has experienced, and we want to have those conversations as well. And we want to be able to provide opportunities for people that are believers to be able to go ahead and have community as well, because that is part of the whole us that we've talked about before. So I definitely, Charity, definitely thank you for bringing that point up about the soberness, and the other individual that brought up the point about the interfaith as well.
I'm on board with the interfaith thing very, very much as well. I think growing up in the Midwest, I think it's hard to not be affected by some sort of religious trauma or something. I'm a victim of the conversion attempts myself, so I'm very much looking forward to connecting with other people that have gone through similar things. And thank you guys for what you're doing. I'm really excited to see this space exist, and especially knowing younger kids, that I know that this can be such a game changer for. If I had known about this or had access to a space like this when I was younger, it would have changed my life. So again, I'm so excited and appreciative of what's to come. Thank you.
That's one of the reasons why we are so passionate about our youth group, because a lot of our facilitators, our whole board in terms of GLSEN, definitely recognize that and say, like, we wish we had that space when we were younger. So that's definitely why youth group is a huge focus for our chapter in particular.
Cool. I'm definitely I'll reach out to you. I'd love to help facilitate or volunteer, whatever I can do.
Absolutely. I'll put my message I'll put my contact information in the chat.
Cool. Thank you.
I'll offer really quick too, with the interfaith work that we're looking to do. I myself am agnostic, and I am not a religious person. One of the most powerful events that I actually was invited to with PFLAG was a pagan gathering for peace up in Butler County. So a lot of our interfaith work is also going to extend into not just the Christian, Catholic, and Jewish communities. I want this to extend into circles of atheist and agnostic people, Unitarian churches, pagan circles. I think that faith is a lot of different types of faith and ways of being. And I just want that to be more of a dynamic conversation. So I also just want to offer that.
Thank you, Dan. And also thank you, Charity, for sharing some of your story. The reason why we exist is for exactly what just happened, for that connection, for people to come together and share their stories and connect. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Michael asks, how accessible are these spaces that you're currently using or hoping to use? Joshua, would you like to speak on that?
Yeah, absolutely. As a person that experiences physical disability myself, accessibility is always going to be something that I will make sure that the board understands when we're creating our events, when we are looking at spaces for events and things like that. Accessibility is always going to be at the forefront of my mind, just because I know how important it is for myself and many of my family members that experience disability. The TreeHouse space specifically is the entrance into TreeHouse is a ramp. And so it's definitely very accessible physically for people that experience physical disabilities. In terms of accessibility, when it comes to accessibility kind of as across the spectrum, we are definitely going to continue to learn and adapt and grow and find opportunities to make sure that we are as inclusive as we can for all types of disabilities and ability levels. It's one of the reasons why we have an ASL interpreter here tonight with us in our space. But yes, in terms of not just physical disabilities, but neurocognitive disabilities, and I think of accessible even wider than that in terms of economic accessibility, accessibility depending on whatever space that you're coming from to our space. So accessibility just in general as an idea of how can we be more accessible to the community, how can we create community that is accessible for anybody that wants to engage, no matter what background you're coming from, what kind of history you're coming from, what kind of traumas you've experienced. We do want to be intentional about that. I've heard from someone recently who has this great idea about, we talk about and we hear a lot about safe spaces and creating safe spaces, but I've heard someone recently talk about how we want to be conscientiously intentional, create a conscientiously intentional space. So we want to be intentional about the space that we create as well. And so if we find out that there are barriers to access, we want to make sure that we know about those so that for next time we can be better. We're not going to get it right 100% of the time, but we will endeavor very, very strongly to make sure that accessibility is one of the forefronts, one of the pillars really of what the work that we do.
Thank you, Joshua.
I'd actually love to chime in really quick too.
Please.
I have a little bit of background in user experience design, and user experience design emphasizes accessibility. And actually it's in a different way, of course, than physical accessibility, although that is part of it, but just about like how to most efficiently use spaces, how to most efficiently use machines, how to mitigate the differences between people and their environments. So I think, yeah, accessibility is big on our minds. And I think it touches a little bit on the next question about how to partner with elders in the community, that I think user experience design becomes especially pertinent for older adults too, and how they use technology, how they use social media or don't use social media, how we can actually engage with them that isn't through the same platforms that maybe a millennial or Gen Xer might use. You know, and we want to have programming that's geared towards older adults. We want, especially too, I think archival events, materials, and exhibits and that kind of thing. History is an important part of a city. It's an important part of the LGBTQ legacy. And I think talking to our queer elders and getting their insights and getting their feedback and, you know, having places for them to meet and gather, having social hours, having, you know, panels and conferences where they can come speak to us on different issues and offer their advice and expertise. I think the possibilities are really endless. We want this to be a multi-generational space. Dan has also talked about too, having 2 interns for TreeHouse. This could be for the organization. This could be for each center. It could be teams of people that have a youth intern or volunteer and an older intern or volunteer, so that we have at all times these 2 perspectives like in our space, and you know, always having that in mind, like, does this work for a young person? Does this work for an older person? Does this work for everyone in between? So I think as far as making it a multi-generational space, an accessible multi-generational space, is so important to us.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And everybody, we are at time. We're at 9 o'clock. I want to be conscious of everybody's time. Thank you for actually sharing your time with us. Please don't hesitate, as we mentioned, to reach out to us on TreeHouse's website, email us. You can reach out to any of us individually. The options are open. So thank you so much for spending your evening getting to know TreeHouse. And go forth, do great things. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here. Oh, sorry.
You're okay. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Jeffrey. Thank you so much for being here and making it a little bit more accessible.
Applause for Jeffrey.
Yes.
Applause. So I also want to give a huge shout out to Missy Spears. Thank you again for all that you do in Covington and Northern Kentucky, for allowing us to meet Lauren. Thank you.
It is mind-blowing to me that I've heard your name, Missy Spears, so much, and this is my first time actually getting to like see you.
Same.
She's even more exquisite in person. Just wait.
That's what I hear.